Well, here we are,
Mm.
our final deep dive
Yeah.
into the world of Black marriages and families.
It's gone by fast, hasn't it?
I know, I know. I feel like we just started uncovering all this incredible history and the unique dynamics of Black families.
So much ground covered. From, the Great Migration to those cultural nuances that really set these families apart.
Right. And don't forget about all the challenges that they've had to overcome throughout history.
And still do.
And still do.
It's
Exactly.
pretty remarkable when you think about it.
It really is. But today, we're going to be shifting gears a little bit, looking at the policies and the advocacy work that directly impact Black families today.
Yeah, it's like we've been looking very closely at all the details,
Right.
and now we're kind of zooming out to see the bigger picture.
Exactly. And all of our sources for this deep dive emphasize how policies in everything, really, housing, employment, criminal justice, healthcare, you name it,
Everything.
they can have this huge ripple effect on families.
It's true, and it's a concept called systemic inequities. And it's a little hard to wrap your head around sometimes. But think of it this way. Policies are like a set of rules that govern the game of life.
Okay.
Now imagine those rules are subtly rigged
Uh,
against certain players.
Not fair.
Not fair. And that's essentially what we're talking about with these systemic inequities. It's about seeing how policies, even ones that seem neutral on the surface, can create barriers
I see.
that disproportionately impact Black families.
Okay, so it's not just individual prejudice we're talking about. It's like the rules themselves
Yeah.
are creating disadvantages.
Exactly. And one really powerful example that our sources highlight is redlining.
Hmm.
Now, remember in our last deep dive how we talked about the Great Migration? Black families were moving north.
Looking for better opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. Seeking a better life.
Yeah.
But what happened was they were often steered towards specific neighborhoods,
Uh-huh.
denied loans,
Wow.
and excluded from the suburbs.
Really? So these housing policies.
Were essentially rigged.
Wow.
And it helped create the wealth gap that we see today.
That's incredible because we were looking at the Great Migration from this, one perspective. But
Right.
when you see those housing policies
Yeah.
that were happening at the same time,
At the same time.
it's like those early decisions set off a chain reaction that we're still feeling generations later.
And that's why a lot of our sources are so passionate about policy reform. It's not just about fixing individual issues. It's about addressing those root causes, those systems that are creating these problems in the first place.
Now, even though we're talking about all of these challenges
Mm.
and these systemic issues, our sources are also filled with
Oh, yeah.
hope and about all the amazing advocacy efforts
Right.
that are happening right now within the Black community.
It's pretty inspiring.
It's incredibly inspiring.
Yeah, it's like a counter movement, pushing back against these systemic barriers. And it's happening at so many different levels. You see it in grassroots organizing within neighborhoods.
Right.
You see it in nationwide campaigns pushing for legislative change.
I see.
One story that really stood out to me, and, we had a lot of sources that had a lot of different stories, was about this group of Black mothers in Chicago who organized to demand better resources for their children's schools. They held rallies, they met with policymakers, and they actually secured funding for new programs and facilities.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I know.
They took matters into their own hands and made a real difference.
And you know what? Their efforts don't just benefit Black families.
No.
They create a more equitable society for everyone.
Yeah.
It's about raising the tide to lift all boats.
I love that. And as we're wrapping up this whole series on Black marriages and families, it feels like all these threads are connecting: the history, the culture, the challenges, and this drive for change.
It's a tapestry, isn't it?
It really is.
Woven with resilience and love and this pursuit of justice that never gives up.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's been an incredible journey. And as we close, we want to turn the question back to you, our listeners. We've explored the past and present of Black marriages and families. But what future do we want to build together?
Yeah.
What role can each of us play in creating a more just and equitable world where those invisible barriers finally crumble?
It's a question worth thinking about.
It is.
For all of us.
Thanks for joining us on this journey.
Yeah, thank you.
And until next time, keep asking those tough questions
Keep learning.
and keep the conversation going.
Absolutely.